As you all must know by now, Enlisted's beloved campaigns, Moscow, Normandy, Berlin, Tunisia, Stalingrad, and the Pacific are disappearing soon, in favour of a new faction-based system with tech trees, new matchmaking, and so much more. We're so close now. This update could even be coming as soon as next week. However, we're all going to miss each of the campaigns, and as a result, it seems fitting to say goodbye by diving into nostalgia and remembering which one was our favourite. Here is my personal top 6 ranking. As a side note, this video was inspired by Paradivision's similar-ish video. I'll leave a link to that one in the description. Anyway, back to more of the normal music now. In 6th place, also known as last place, and this might be a surprise to many of you, but I've placed the Pacific campaign. By the way, it's not a bad campaign. I think most players can agree no campaign is outright terrible, but in my opinion, it's the least, interesting. That being said, Japan, as a unique and one of the most attractive factions to play, are a fantastic addition to the game and open up a load of possibilities in the future, such as for Soviet versus Japan battles in the Manchuria and Korea regions at war's end. The Pacific maps themselves are also very aesthetically pleasing. The developers have outdone themselves there, and do in fact bring you back to the good old days in 1944. Though, due to completely open maps with virtually no cover and all buildings being either destructible or shot through, it does make for a rather chaotic gameplay experience during full 10v10 matches, lending itself to explosive and flamethrower spam, and as a haven for grey zone tanks, especially those pesky M13s and Tarsays. And you all know what I mean. And of course there aren't many different maps yet, as it's the newest campaign, so it does get a bit stale if you're only maining this theatre of war. But perhaps the biggest thing that makes me put this campaign in last is the fact that, across the entire existence of this campaign, one of the sides always hard dominated the other, because of player base imbalances, and therefore all new players just join the side that always wins, compounding this effect. For a lengthy time, the Japanese were curb stomping the Americans, and since the addition of the M2 Carbine and Pacific Paratrooper squads, the Americans quickly shifted to put down the Japanese. With no M2 Carbine anymore though versus the Japanese post-merge due to the new battle rating system, the games on these maps should be more balanced going forwards, right? Well, we can only hope so. Regardless, Pacific War, you will still be missed. Into 5th place now, but with the Tunisia campaign. Now I know Tunisia itself has a very loyal and fanatical player base. Often people who love this campaign rarely play any other campaign, so they will disagree with my ranking. But I don't disagree with them, that this campaign is very fun and super unique. The only theatre where the Italians and British soldiers present themselves, what is not to like? New uniforms, weaponry, amazing premium and event squads that really add to the immersion, and equally it has what I would call the most unique set of maps in the entire game. They play completely differently to every other campaign's maps, though this campaign is not without its gripes. The biggest issue that has plagued this campaign, more so here than any other campaign in the entire game, including the Pacific War, is that there isn't, and has never been, any sort of player balance whatsoever. One side has always hard stomped the other. It used to be the British ruining the Italians as spaghetti with ketchup, and nowadays, after the addition of the Folgore flamethrower of paratroopers, the Italians get their revenge and ruin England's day more than they did in Euro 2020. The only way games were balanced here is when I'd play on stream and we'd get full 10v10 exciting Q-Snipe games, and you can always tune in to watch or participate in those, but playing alone it was always too easy one way or impossible the other, which drove the player base insane and ruined some of the Tunisia campaign's reputation. Yet, the odd chance that you did get a balanced match, it was always full sweat mode and full toxicity activated. This campaign alone brought out the worst in the Enlisted player base. Flamethrower spam, the hardest grey zone tank camping, anti-personnel mines everywhere, barbed wire completely covering the few buildings that did exist with no room to maneuver at all, impact grenades, rifle grenades, mates you couldn't go anywhere to avoid it. Tunisia became horrific to play with full matches as the player base would do this. You all know what I'm talking about. The worst experience in the game for try-hard matches. But even with all that said, I'll still miss it, especially the separate Italian and British factions. What the future holds for them though, we do not know. And that is what's exciting. Now into 4th, and definitely an unpopular pick for the sweatiest of the sweaty player base amongst this video's viewers, is the Battle of Berlin. The Call of Duty zealots, the run-and-gun dogmatists, all these types of animals hibernate for winter over in this campaign. But that's not a bad thing, as this campaign can have some of the best games when balanced teams are around. The full automatic rifle lover's heaven brings out the best in Enlisted players for high-stakes, super intense gameplay, and I do love that. Players that fantasize over this would place Berlin in 1st first on their tier lists, but if you're a new player or a bolt-action lover, I reckon you'd put this in last place. It divides opinion, that's for sure, but why is it fourth for me? Partly because it's where grey zone tank campers forge their reputation. The sheer number of IS-2s and Tiger 2s that sit at the back of the map, unkillable with their super thick armor, pressing left click once every 15 seconds and getting a free 30 kills on infantry is annoying at best. It equally has some truly atrocious playable map areas and game mode combinations for attacking teams, most of which are just open spaces with no cover at all, taking none of the quality of equipment here into consideration, or perhaps you literally can't flank one side due to some stupid pool of water making defending way too easy. Or it could just be armored train. Don't pretend you like this game mode, because nobody does. Whenever I get this map, at least 7 players out of the 20 leave within the first 30 seconds. And of course, there's the fact how one side has always dominated hard here throughout the course of, well, human history. It was the Soviets back in 45, but the Germans in 2023 on Enlisted. And all these things together means it was not often when you would actually get the most fun games you could have here. Therefore, it's going into 4th. It will be missed, but then again, remember, tier 4 and 5 battles are likely going to be all the same variety as Berlin was post-merge. So it's not as if the gameplay we all know and love is going anywhere. The campaign in 3rd on my list will without a shadow of a doubt be the one you all completely disagree with. You'll want to click off this video calling me a gaijin shill, or just want to insult me in the comments because I'm brain dead. You know what? Fair enough. But hear me out at least. It's the Battle of Stalingrad. Yes, that campaign you all probably hate because of its piss-poor monetization system, and I'll be the first to put my hand up and agree it was a terrible idea. And as a result, due to much of the player base avoiding it altogether for much of its existence, you often got more emptier games here than in any other campaign. However, I have honestly had the best games here, in terms of player balance, equipment balance, and ticket balance than in any other campaign. A full 10v10 here is actually so intense and so fun, regardless whether you're using Berlin-style full automatic rifle spam or if you're using bolt-action rifles only, which, by the way, for those of you that do remember, got their buffs in this campaign first before any other campaign did. The maps are also fantastic aesthetically, but equally are the best balanced maps in terms of attacking and defending together in the entire game, even if they got repetitive over time, as there weren't many of these maps anyway. Lots more players, even without the full access pack, are now panic playing it in order to grind for the MP717 as it's disappearing soon. And I know for a fact that many of these players have been realizing how good this campaign is upon playing it more than they did before. Some of my funniest moments with friends have been here as well, with flamethrower tanks being so squishy but so devastating, unique premium squads with literal targets on their chests, or the first female squads, one of which is actually really good and the other is just truly dreadful with probably the worst plane in the game, but we don't talk about that. The point is, we all know the monetization was bad, but the campaign underneath it was great. It's close to my favorite personally, but I could not, with a conscience, put it higher due to the 2 much more popular campaigns that we have left to discuss. RIP Stalingrad. You will be missed by at least a small portion of the player base, but not your monetization system. Bon voyage to that. You guys all know what 2 we have left, but in 2nd is the classic, the Normandy campaign. I mean, how could this not be in the top 2 at the bare minimum? I reckon most of you watching this right now would probably place this campaign in 1st, as it's by far the most popular campaign. I always get full 10v10s over here, and it's also by some distance going to be the most common one that new players began their enlisted journeys on. It has all the classic aspects that Western players will have seen many times in films, documentaries, and miniseries, namely the 101st Airborne Division, M1 carbines, M1 Garans, paratroopers, Springfield rifles, jumbos, P-47s, but even on the other side, Tiger tanks, STGs, Kar-98Ks, and everything you could want. The beaches of Normandy, the open fields of France, the picturesque towns, and the immersion that comes alongside all of this. It's fast-paced, loads of stuff to do, and even early war equipment is very viable to do well in this campaign. Yeah, it's true that late game it just comes down to M2 carbine spam versus FG42 and STG spam, but it's still fun to pick up some Gewehr 43, Browning A6 on the ground and just go ham. And the presence of so many paratrooper event squads has recently rendered this campaign even more chaotic than it was, and that's an impressive feat in itself, due to anyone being able to just instantly land anywhere and almost cycling this ability, alongside rapid firing huge magazine weapons like the Vickers and Thompson 100 round drum. Yeah, it is true, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And once more, yeah, in most of the campaign's history, Germany, or the Axis, have won most of the games, but it's always been more balanced in terms of players than the other campaigns we've spoken about earlier, and especially recently with the addition of the Paras and the T-20E1 weapon. I would say the balance is almost perfect. Now, I might constantly talk about the toxicity and explosion spam that makes this campaign messy at times for the average player, but when it boils down to it, how can you not love this campaign? And in first is the OG, the first campaign and equally the best, the Battle of Moscow. Now before you shout at me that Normandy is not first, let's be real, nobody hates this campaign. I could say so for all the other 5, that there is a good portion of the player base that strongly dislikes each of the Normandy, Berlin, Tunisia, Stalingrad and Pacific campaigns, but no one really hates Moscow. Why is that? Well, for starters, bolt-action rifles and semi-autos are the most prevalent guns around here. Boy do I remember having so much fun playing with them in the snowy, cold winter maps, with your awesome looking warm uniforms which adds to that immersion, especially against other players using the same ones for that more natural gameplay balance. In addition, it has not completely overpowered versus infantry, but still useful planes and tanks. This often leads to the most chill gameplay, where people have to try and win obviously and pretty hard, but they don't have to be toxic about it, so everybody enjoys it. And it's also one of those campaigns that tends to see much more balanced games even if you queue up solo, as it's a very popular one. Yet, even when you need to get your palms sweaty, it's a fun type of sweaty. The maps are among the coolest, including literally because it's cold, and the gameplay here is top notch. Yes, some players will indeed point to the MKB and Fedorov assault rifle spam amongst campaign completers, which I do concede has ruined the fun a tiny bit for me, as without these it was a great test for what low battle rating matches with early war equipment will be like after the merge. But it's not the end of the world. The campaign's only real fault though was the lack of any full automatic rifle class weapon for the Axis, whilst the Soviets got the AVS-36, which is one of my personal favourite weapons in the entire game, though the new tech tree and tier system will solve this problem entirely, so we will be glad to see those issues mended. But those were just my opinions. What is your top 6 ranking? What campaigns will you guys miss the most? Comment down below, it'll be a ton of nostalgia and something we can all look back at together and laugh at in the future. Enlisted is becoming a much better game with this update and I'm super happy, but the campaign system will forever be in our hearts. Special thanks to all my patrons and YouTube channel members including Vertix, Levy, KitsuneLord91 and others.